Welcome to the Grab a Hole podcast. I am your host, Justin S., and I am back this week by myself. We are doing the pod from the house, of course. I'm back inside. I am solo this week as the guys had some scheduling issues. As we talked about, they're going to get busier here as time goes on, and it is playoff baseball time for Damien and his Mariners, and David also has his second job that is now kicked in. So it's going to be me from time to time, and as soon as we can get both those guys back in the fold, they will be here. But for tonight, it is just me as we are talking later in the week this week than normal. As I record this, SmackDown is now over if you watch the East Coast feed, and we are now in the last week, as next week will be predictions. So this week is the last week of just build before the go home shows, as next week SmackDown will be in Australia as they will travel, and Raw will be at its normal time slot this upcoming Monday. I want to talk about a few things tonight, but first, before we do that, of course, let's take care of the normal business. If you're listening to us on Amazon Music or Audible, thank you. Please make sure that you subscribe to both of those on whichever platform you're listening on. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please make sure that you like and subscribe down below, so that way we can continue to grow our channel and grow this page and grow this podcast. As much as we like doing this, we're just normal guys that try to do this podcast. I do all this stuff by myself as far as the recording, the editing, all that good stuff. And then we have the guys come in and they give their on-call commentary to the whole thing as they do. And it's just us. It's just friends having a conversation, and we want you to feel that way. And whether you agree with us, disagree with us, whatever that is, please make sure that you join us every week by subscribing to the channel and making sure that you hit that notification bell so you get these as soon as they drop. As sometimes it's early in the week, sometimes it's the end of the week, as this week was a little bit busier over the last week as I am no longer on vacation and my son's birthday has now been behind us. So getting back into the swing of the normal routine. So let's get straight to it. Coming out of SmackDown tonight, we have Cody and Seth continuing to build towards their match in Crown Jewel in Australia. And one of the things that is interesting about this build for these two is that there's more here at stake than just the ring for who is, the champion's champion, so to speak, the Crown Jewel champion, as they call it. And the Super Bowl-like ring is what they have. Cody's looking for a second one. Seth is looking for his first. But they've made it more about their story versus the champion versus champion story, which I like, because as I heard earlier in the week, this eliminates trying to make a headlining title versus a secondary title. And that's needed. That's definitely needed, that you need to elevate both titles and present them as equally important. And this has been an excellent way to do it. I know that as of late, there's been a lot of quote unquote, disgruntled fans over ticket prices or creative and the stories that they're telling. But this one's been interesting in a good way, that they have found a way to make everybody important here as far as the two champions go. And there's things that are intertwined into the Vision group itself, which has become interesting, because now there's other people that could be a factor. There's other things that can keep you guessing, which is what we asked for, right? We want to see some things be different. We want to see some possibilities. We don't want it to be predictable. So with this, we had, a couple promos the last 2 weeks from Seth and Cody. Cody talked about being up 3-0. They've talked about the watch from WrestleMania 40 that Cody gifted the four guys in the tag match. They've used Heyman to be the promo on behalf of Seth a couple times now with Cody. And on behalf of the Vision, Cody brought up Brock and his involvement in that. And, now she hasn't been on camera with the group around Cody, but Becky's been in this Vision group now. And I feel like they used it as kind of a quiet or subtle reset, which to me, I like, because it's changed the dynamic of how they look on screen, because you don't have Heyman with Seth all the time doing nothing but standing there, because now Heyman is there because of the bronze. He goes where the bronze go. And then if he's there with Seth individually, it's because Becky's not there. And lately with this Cody story, he's been telling people, I want to go by myself. This is me. I'm doing this. I'm doing this, for me, by me type of deal. So don't worry about it. And I like that. It's definitely been different. And even in the back, they've had segments where Becky and him are interacting. It's not Heyman and him. So there's been a lot of good things in the way that this group is now being presented differently, with the way that they look differently, and the way that they're behaving differently. And I said that there's things intertwined. We have, as I mentioned, Brock is intertwined after he talked to Heyman and said, hey, we need to talk. And then Heyman does his introduction at WrestlePalooza against Cena. So now you're wondering, are they working together? Is there something that we don't know about? Cody brings it up. Seth says he knows everything because everything goes through him, which makes you think that maybe Brock could be, setting something up. So they're teasing another Cody Brock match down the road. But, you know, it could be the deal that is worked out with Seth via Heyman, that if Seth wins, then he gets a world heavyweight title shot, or he gets a shot at Cody, something to that effect. So there's some options there. And then, of course, we saw the return of Randy Orton last week. And then they had a tag match tonight where Cody and Randy took on the Bronze. As you'll hear throughout this entire podcast, the Bronze are being jumped back and forth. They're being on Raw, they're being on SmackDown. Division is a part of all this. We didn't have a draft this year to split up the shows. There's been some call-ups, but no actual draft. And I think that that's because they're kind of going back to the idea of like the main stories are going to cross over. And especially now that you have PLEs on ESPN and you have the Netflix deal. And as of late, Netflix viewership is down globally. And we talked about before, me and Damien, that the guy from ESPN wrote an article saying that, they weren't very good. ESPN execs weren't happy. They gave it a C grade at best after WrestlePalooza for their first PLE. And so they were hoping to have something better here. So it seems like they plan on having multiple stories cross over and be a part of both shows and things of that nature, which I'm for. Like, it's not for everybody, but if you're a part of the main story and intertwined in multiple things like the Vision is, then this makes a lot of sense, right? Because they're trying to run the WWE. So if you're trying to run the WWE, then you need to be on the shows that the WWE has. And they've done a good job of that. Tonight, as I said, Orton and Cody took on the Bronze. Seth gets involved. He hits the stomp on Randy. Randy eats a tsunami, and then they get the pin. And as the match is over and the Vision is walking away and Seth is endorsing them, he stops himself because he sees Cody laying there next to Randy. And Heyman warns him. He says, don't go. He's in your head. Please don't go. And tries to grab him to stop him. And Seth shakes him off and runs in there and goes for a stomp and winds up missing the stomp. And Cody hits the crossroads. And Heyman stops the Bronze from going to help. He lets it happen and says, wait, don't go running in there. And SmackDown goes off the air tonight with Cody standing tall again. And Damien and I talked a little bit about this, that this seems to be a situation where if you're watching this based on the fact of wanting to see Seth and Cody again, they're in a realistic, logical way. There's no way that they let Cody go up 4-0. That just doesn't make sense. They brought up the 3-0 thing. They're talking about how much he's in his head. There's always been backup plans, right? That's always been the idea. There's backup plans, whether that's been Braun, whether that's been Becky, the emergence of Bronson Reed. I'm going to say that I expect that Brock Lesnar is the next backup plan for Seth. That as much as, he keeps getting caught, that there's going to be something to this some way, somehow, even if it's just a handshake deal through Heyman, that there's some sort of connection here. And ultimately, that he works with him to get an opportunity or get something out of this, to where it wasn't just a one-off deal where he squashed Cena and then moves on. Like they want something for him. And I think it's going to be Vision related when this is all said and done. The Bronze in this situation, I talked about a different presentation. The Bronze have been booked pretty damn good. I mean, they're not always the winner in the match, but they're getting ring reps with the tippy top guys. They're getting Roman, they're getting Cody, they're getting Randy, they're getting Drew, they're getting all these guys that are in that upper echelon to interact with or to get in the ring with. LA Knight, right? Like that's the other one I was thinking, not Drew, but LA Knight. And you're seeing these things where there's these interactions where it's like, damn, like they're rubbing shoulders with the tippy top guys, so they must hold them in a pretty high regard. And for them, I mean, they pick up a win tonight. Randy eats the pin, so you don't want Cody to take a pin, so you make Randy take a pin. You had Roman get his ass beat after Clash in Paris by them and just keep going at him. I mean, there was, multiple instances here over the last month or two where you could point that the Bronze have really come out ahead in all of this, that they're the ones that are reaping the most benefits of this vision group, which I think has been a good thing. I mean, as much as we like to nitpick as wrestling fans and can be very fickle, I really feel like that's a positive that's come out of this, and it's only going to make the Bronze better, both of them. Everybody talks about the freak athlete that is Braun Breaker, but let's not forget Bronson Reed is standing up on his own 2 feet here. He's good in his own right, and he's proven to be what is now somewhat of a lost art as a modern monster, right? Nobody really believed in Braun Strowman as the monster. They like the run around the ring spot. Omos, people don't really, invest in. They haven't seen a lot of his work recently in AAA or even in Japan, so they're not really invested in him. But overall, it's like Bronson is the guy that they're using as a modern day monster, and it's working. From the tribal thief to attacking Seth before he broke his ankle to being a part of War Games and jumping off the cage. Then also, now that he's a part of the Vision, he's beating up Roman Reigns. He's beating up Randy Orton. He's beating up Cody Rhodes. He's beating up Jey Uso. Like he's standing on his own 2 feet in his own right, which is very good for both of them. Something to keep an eye on. And because of this, I mentioned that they've beat up Roman Reigns. So you have Brock's intertwined in this now somehow with Heyman. You have this whole situation where Cody's involved because of their match. And so then you still haven't finished the deal with Roman, right? Roman still wants a piece of Seth, but the Vision is the one that keeps taking him out. He hasn't gotten to Seth. And he's, gone away, come back, gone away, come back. And so he's been intertwined in this. And in the middle of that, the Usos have had to help fight that situation because Jey wants to be world heavyweight champion and Seth is that guy and he wants his title back. And now Jimmy's back in the fold. And they put the Usos somewhat back together, not fully. And I want to be clear about this. This was stated by Bully Ray on Busted Open on XM Sirius Satellite Radio. And he was right. The Usos getting back together are never going to be the Usos that everybody wants to remember. Because now they've built Jey into an individual star that doesn't need the tag team. They were a tag team when they were, hungry. They were both in the tag team scene together. Nobody was thinking individual run or let's go crazy. And ultimately, it wound up benefiting both of them to be in the tag team in the long term. And then obviously the bloodline stuff elevated both of them. But coming out of this, Jey has reaped the most benefits of this. And because of that, he is now looked at as an individual star, from the crowd entrance and the eating to, wanting to do Make-A-Wish with him and all the things that have come with that. He's now his own star. And Jimmy is now starting to look a whole lot more like Robin next to Batman rather than them being a team like the Fantastic Four. So you got to be able to see that and understand that they'll get back together and they'll have their moments, but it'll never be the same that it once was. And also a big factor in this is now that Roman has come back for the 44th time this year, we've seen that he was giving Jey advice, right? The last time we saw Roman was Clash in Paris. We saw Jey get involved, trying to save him. We've seen them tag together at SummerSlam. They've been working together. And now it's assumably, seems to be that they are grooming Jey to be the new quote unquote tribal chief or be the next Roman, so to speak. And Jimmy doesn't seem to like it. And so Monday, we saw Roman return, as I said, and make an appearance in the tag tornado match that the Bronze had versus the Usos. And he helps Jey. And after the match is over, he daps Jey up and says, take everything. What did I tell you? Take everything. And he's talking about that he told him the only people he can trust is family. And the only person he should trust is himself. And so now we've seen multiple weeks where he hasn't helped LA Knight. Jimmy's questioning him. They had Cody talk to him, where his focus was more on Cody's championship title than listening to Cody. And then now you're seeing what he's doing with Roman. And Roman dapping him up, telling him, hey, this is exactly like we talked about. This is all yours. Take everything. And then even was quoted, because they had to bleep it out, even on Netflix, is he looked around and said, fuck them all, take everything. So now we have Jay, who seems to be trying to be elevated on a tribal chief or Roman Reigns-esque position on screen. Not talking star power or needle moving. That's not what we're talking about here. But we are talking about his position and persona. And when you're looking at that, you see Jimmy in the background and you see him like, what the hell? Like, nah, like, I don't want you to be him. Like, this is what we talked about all those years ago, is being corrupt and falling prey to that and falling into the trap that is being that dude and thinking you got power. And these two have had some bickering moments where he's talked about, like, you're not Roman, you ain't got the Ula Fala. And then Jay firing back at him and saying, you ain't never been world champion, so you don't get it either. And it's interesting to see what they're going to do, because, you know, we saw this in the build to the original Bloodline story where, you know, both Usos were against Roman, and then eventually they fall in line, and there was all the twists and turns that came with that and the build that became. I'm wondering if they're trying to do something similar and recreate that in a different way, because it was such a money build for them and such a monumentous momentum shifting uh, type storyline for them to bring fans back and bring people into wrestling again and make wrestling cool. So it seems to be that that's where they're headed, and it seems that Jay could be headed for a heel turn. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's interesting to see Roman involved. It's, as much as I like what they're doing with the Bronze in the Vision, it's kind of getting hard to just watch Roman come back to leave again, come back to leave again, come back to leave again. And he's working with the same people over and over again. That makes it difficult. Like, I'm not saying he's got to have Seth out the gate, but be around to beat the other two and then get to Seth. And if Seth beats him, then go away. Quit doing the, well, I beat the henchman and then I disappeared, or I had to be written off TV and be gone because of a movie. So I've been gone for a month and a half, and then now I'm back, and now I want to be involved in this, and now everybody's paying attention to me again. People keep getting their hopes up. And I've heard this word used a lot, reprogrammed, that WWE is trying to reprogram fans into what to expect or not to expect anymore. Because for the longest time, and I'm somebody who's a 30 plus year fan at this point, that you get used to certain things, right? Like, that's the deal, is you know, we've talked about heel faces where it's boo the bad guy and cheer the good guy. We've also talked about, you know, PLE schedules of them trying to do these things every 3 weeks and being in this cycle, and then having these weird long cycles where, you know, there's not one from Survivor Series to Royal Rumble, or Royal Rumble and, you know, Elimination Chamber are early, but then you run late going into WrestleMania. So there's all these things that are like have changed over time and have evolved. And, you know, I guess you got to say, like, that's just the evolution of things sometimes. But there's also this undeniable thing where they've talked about, you know, the modern top guy that gets opportunities now. Vince was very adamant about, you know, it's wrestling. You're either in wrestling or you're not in wrestling. And if you want to go do movies, then it's got to be on our schedule, and it's got to be this and that. And I find it interesting and even a little funny that for everything negative, and I'm not condoning anything whatsoever that Vince McMahon has done or is being accused of. I'm not condoning that whatsoever. I'll say it again. But his name about how he ran the wrestling business has come up a lot lately since TKO has spoken on the wrestling business, or what they think they know about the wrestling business. From their CEO, Mark Shapiro, talking about ticket pricing and how Vince targeted families, and that was not what they were planning on doing, that they plan on upping the prices even more, as we now realize that John Cena's final match will be in Washington, D.C. on a Saturday night's main event, and the packages for the seating are ridiculous. I mean, literally in the thousands upon thousands of dollars for some of those packages to be a part of that show. And now, you know, you talk about Vince and the way that he approached top guys and keeping them on TV or keeping them important, and understanding attractions, that if somebody went away, it was because they were hurt, or it was because they were trying to deal with something that they were doing within WWE's production realm. I'm not saying that people don't deserve opportunities in Hollywood or that they don't deserve to be able to do some fun projects that aren't WWE specific or related, but when you're constantly gone, it's hard to treat you as a top guy. And I think that the blueprint that they use for Roman in the bloodline and his, 1400 plus day reign as WWE champion was an example of how to do it right. He wasn't on TV every week, but he could be there to do a promo. He could be there to do something the week that he was there. He would give instructions for the following week. He would talk about what they needed to do without him next week. I'm not coming next week. You figure it out. Or I'm not coming back for 2 more weeks. So this is what I expect of you. That was a way to keep doing it. You were intrigued whether he was only in the ring, and he didn't even have to wrestle. He could just be in the ring talking with that bloodline story. But he was there enough to keep you interested. Right now, you're rotating people out so poorly that they're like, well, we have so much talent. And Damien and I talked about that, how thick this roster is with talent and how crazy it is to think that there's going to be enough touches for the ball to go around and everybody scores a bucket. That's not realistic. I think that there needs to be, kind of a pecking order, and you need to understand that. And then maybe that'll help elevate some of these mid-card people or the lower level of the mid-card, because right now, one of the things that we've seen as a super positive is NXT. And I'll talk about this here in a little bit about NXT being involved in the main roster stuff lately. So if we're sitting here talking about that, they seem to have a good grip on this stuff and how to build things to where you want them ready for the next level. So if NXT is slow or, supposed to be not as fast and not as, normal main roster stuff, then once they get there, they seem to be ready to roll. And it's a matter of them getting their time to shine. And, right now there's a few names that, like I said, I'll talk about shortly, that are getting some shining moments and making people go, oh, who's that? Oh, let me see that person, and getting them familiar a little bit and dipping their toe in the water. So I don't understand why they just can't find balance now. Now that Vince is gone, you have these guys that just disappear. Like right now, you're talking about we're talking about Roman coming and going, but then at the same time, like I'll talk about this next. Tiffany, we've had Tiffany that you gave her the belt. Everybody wanted to see her turn on Nia and get the belt. She gets the belt. Then she doesn't do a great job of being a heel, and a babyface situation was turned because of Nia. So now you go, okay, she's the champion and she's a babyface. And then that kind of fell flat. And she's had some really good matches in between. A couple street fights with Nia, the Charlotte WrestleMania match. She's had some good flashes, but she definitely needs more reps, and she definitely needs to continue to improve. And they just started cooling her off. And the focus became the world's heavyweight title for the women on Raw. But we weren't getting that shit on SmackDown anymore. It just kind of faded away. Then the same thing happened with the middle card title for the women. You had 2 women win in Lyra, and then on the other side, Chelsea Green, and Lyra disappears and fades into the background before they make the title prominent with Becky. Not Lyra, Becky, which came back at WrestleMania, which was months later after the title debuted with an inaugural champion. So they've done this weird thing where they feel like, well, we're giving them a break so you don't get burnt out on them. But they've programmed people to have an insatiable appetite for main stars. So if it's a champion, you're looked at as a star. Unless you're somebody who's already made, like a Roman, a Randy, somebody like that who you can turn around and go, well, it doesn't matter if they have the belt because they're a star. So when they come out or they're involved in something, they're important. And because of that, you wind up running the risk of, well, now this is just cold and this isn't going anywhere. Or you have people questioning, where the fuck have they been? And why are they not a part of the plans? Or why are they not a part of what's going on with this PLE or that PLE? And it makes it extremely difficult when SmackDown is only 4 fucking matches and full of filler. And then your PLE is only 5 matches. That's kind of crazy to think that there's only 9 matches between the Friday show and a PLE in the same week, and that the rest is just filler. And between those 2 shows, you're looking at almost 6 hours of content. So that's a little wild because not all of these matches are going 30 minutes. So what are we doing? I feel like there's missed opportunity because we're more worried about the ad filler and the money. So with Tiffany, we now have her match for Crown Jewel because Stephanie beat Io in the world title match. The world title was vacant. And Stephanie got her match after she won her battle royal 3 months ago. She finally gets her match against Io, and they tore the house down. It was a great match. And Stephanie hits, the spinal tap, and it looks super cool. Everything's good. She's the champ now. And so Tiffany has to have her 3-way match last Friday on SmackDown. And it was Nia, it was Jade, and it was Tiffany. And Damien and I sat here and said, Nia makes the most sense visually, that she can tell a good story as the smaller wrestler. She's faster, she's athletic, but Nia brings the power and the bigger frame, so it's an easy story to tell. They decided they wanted to go Tiffany, but it wasn't without, it wasn't without questions. As we would see in the match, Nia throws Jade into the steps and she starts bleeding like crazy. And a lot of people were like, great, Nia hurt somebody else. Let's be clear about something. Is it possible that she threw her that hard into it? Yeah, but there's been a lot of video clips that have been looked at repeatedly by multiple people, including people in the business and people not in the business, that have all sat here and said, hey man, that's not all Nia. That like Jade has a hand in that. She can slow herself down. And where she ate it, I mean, she looked like she was cut like a UFC fighter, like the skin flat back and the white meat was showing, as they say. It was a lot. I mean, it was crazy. So that impacted things. And then in the finish of the match, it looked like there was supposed to be a moment where Tiffany takes Jade out and pins Nia, and Nia's supposed to just lay there and take the pin, and the referee stops it too, and Nia does nothing. She doesn't kick. The ref just stopped. And there's always been a rule that I've heard from multiple people, multiple podcasts, multiple platforms, several indie wrestlers that I've had the fortunate opportunity to hear from, that all say the same thing, that it's the referee's job to count. It's the wrestler's job to kick out. So you don't have to know the match if you're the counting referee, because your job is to count. So if they're kicking out, they're kicking out. It's on them. If they don't kick out, that's not your fuck up. That's their fuck up for not kicking out. And in this instance, the referee pulls her arm and she just doesn't count the 3. So now the crowd's pissed. You can see there's a conversation going on between Nia, the referee, Tiffany. Nobody knows what the fuck to do. And they wind up going to, we'll just hit her moonsault and then pin me. So the crowd looks lost. They lose everything in the whole momentum of the match that was already wild for splitting Jade open. And now it's a finger pointing game. Well, Nia split Jade and Nia did, maybe Tiffany was late. Maybe the referee missed their spot because they were supposed to count and they didn't. There's a lot of finger pointing going on, and right now Nia can be the scapegoat. Listen, I'm not a huge Nia fan. I'm not. I've made that clear here. But I don't think that was all her fault in this situation. There has been in the past, but I don't think this last week was entirely her fault. So because of this, Tiffany moves on and she gets her match with Stephanie Vaquer, which will take place in Perth for their version of the Crown Jewel Championship ring, which Liv Morgan has the other one, and she's obviously on the shelf, so they're going to definitely have a new winner with that ring. And tonight, they had a contract signing between the two of them. And in the midst of having this, they shake hands, they both sign, they shake hands, and Tiffany goes to walk off, and Julia and Kiana James take her out in the aisleway. And then they get in the ring and they start telling Stephanie that, if you want to be a star, then I'm the one that's supposed to represent you in Kiana James. And, you could be a star like Julia and all this, which leads to them having a moment until Tiffany wakes back up from the aisleway, pulls Kiana James out, and then they brawl with those two and wind up standing tall. So as I said, they built the Cody and Seth thing perfect because it's not about just Championship 1 and Championship 2. It's about the two guys battling that happen to both be champions in this instance with history. These two don't have any history. Tiffany hasn't done a good job of being a babyface, and she's not going to be the babyface against Stephanie. This isn't a babyface versus babyface type match. This would have been a perfect opportunity to turn her back as a heel and wind up leaving Stephanie hanging while the other two took her out. I don't see what the good was to take out Tiffany. I don't think it makes sense to have Julia and Kiana James tag up against these two when they're going to have a match. I mean, Julia is the U.S. champion. She's not going after the WWE championship yet. She's not going after the world title yet. And Kiana James is only wrestling here and there. She's a manager to Julia and her mouthpiece currently. So if you're doing that, what good does that do to elevate the match that's going to happen between those two? Was it to make Tiffany look like a good guy standing next to Stephanie? Was that the idea? Because other than that, I don't understand what this was. I hope they tear the house down. I really do. I think that they're capable of it. I really do. But when it comes to the idea of the logic, and even if you're using wrestling logic and not rationale logic, this one doesn't exactly connect for me. And I'm not on that level. I would rather see Julia and Stephanie than I would Tiffany and Stephanie, to be honest. And for those people that are fans of Julia, like, that was a glaring thing tonight. You saw these two in the ring, you went, "Oh, I like that. I'd rather see that. That's more interesting to me. This seems more fun to me." And they have history. They have history in NXT, and they have history from other countries and other promotions. So there's a lot there that I didn't understand as to why they're doing this. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Speaking of Crown Jewel and somebody that's right here, not that backwards, but the other one right here, the other picture right there, AJ Styles on Monday thanked the fans for his opportunity to fight John Cena. You would see that with that now it's basically just a one-off. And I hope that we see the Cena that worked his ass off with Cody at SummerSlam, puts on his working boots, and he gets his stuff done. Everybody knows that Cena's almost done, that he's, literally got a handful of dates, and you're counting down one by one before he's really, really done. And because they use so many dates in the stupid heel turn idea early on and in the middle, where it was like, oh, we're going to use him scarcely before the turn, and then the turn happens and he goes away again as a way to be like, up yours, I'm leaving. Then when he came back and he had to explain a bunch of heel shit and do a bunch of heel shit that was a waste, they used a bunch of dates that were basically just throwaways. So now he only has a handful of dates, and you got to make them count with matches. And there's a lot of speculation on who this last match is going to be, or who deserves it the most, and all that good stuff. But I don't know who it is, and I'm not trying to speculate that right now. But what I will say is I hope to see AJ and John tear it up. They have great chemistry in the ring. These two have both wonderfully worked together for years as they've gone through this since AJ came to the WWE, and John really helped elevate AJ as the WWE champion at one point. So to me, this is going to be a fun match. It's a great way to, again, play the hits on the way out for John, and hopefully these two tear it up. There wasn't anything this week other than AJ thanking the fans and it being about the fans. I don't know if it was already in the plans, and so they just use social media and they're just good at it, or if this was really John being like, whoever their idea was, I don't want it. I'd rather work with AJ, and just put it out there. And then because it got such a big response, they were like, all right, we'll do that. That works. You can call your own shot here. So either way, I'm happy about it. They keep using AJ and Dragon Lee on Raw. It's something, but I'm looking forward to AJ and John at Crown Jewel. Other things that are going on just in general in the show that aren't super intertwined or super build crazy. Sami Zayn has now done a U.S. title open challenge now several times, and we've seen John Cena be the first one. Last week it was Javon Evans. This week it was Aleister Black. And I said I'd mention earlier about this NXT thing. This was a great way to introduce Javon Evans. You could see that he's a young up-and-coming guy. He's full of spring. He's really, full of energy. He can really get after it, and he's been working with guys like Obafemi in NXT. He's now a part of Team NXT when they take on Team TNA this upcoming Tuesday in the, I guess if you want to call it the Showdown is what they're calling it now. It was called Invasion, but they changed the name for a particular reason, apparently, that Saudi was not happy with that reasoning due to their own political reasoning. Whatever. So because of that, now it's called the Showdown, and Javon Evans is a part of Team NXT with Ricky Starks or Ricky Saints, also Trick Williams and Miles Bourne. So it should be fun. It's supposed to be a Survivor Series style match of elimination, It'll be fun. It seems like, Javon Evans got a good reaction, and then they brought him back again this week, and he got to be part of the show this week in tag. So good for Javon Evans. Good for Aleister Black. You talked about the idea of like, well, they need to do something with Andrade. They need to do something with Aleister. And then you find out Andrade's been in trouble for multiple drug policy violations and got let go and is now back in AEW as quickly as he showed up in WWE. So now that left Rey Fenix on a whim. And so now he gets to have a little fun, and they have that with Los Garzas this week, the former AAA tag team champions. And so Javon Evans gets a little more love. And so good for him. And good for Aleister Black that he got to show some work this week with Sammy. And then obviously Damian Priest is a distraction as they continue their moments and have their back and forth, which is something that they're doing. I know Priest isn't in a high profile spot right now, but having him work with Aleister while Aleister's doing this stuff has been something to do, and that's something that's important. It's something to do. They're trying something. We're back, and I said tag team because Los Garzas in the AAA tag team. We're back to having no relevance in the tag team division. We have tag teams, and the tag titles on both shows are irrelevant again. Like, we built this big old moment to a tables, ladders, and chairs match for the tag titles, and then it was like we blew our wad there, and we used every team in the fucking division, and so because of that, everybody gets to take a break. Everybody's banged up. Everybody take a break. It was like they didn't really think that one through. And it was like, okay, but if you do that, then maybe you can make the Raw titles prominent, because you made it a point on SmackDown to make the tag titles prominent on SmackDown. Not necessarily the PLEs all the time, but at least on the show. That's not the case on Raw. Finn and JD are just holding them again. We're back to that again. And if they're just going to sit, then make it fucking believable and put them on the Bronze. Nobody's going to beat the Bronze. Nobody thinks that anybody's going to take them shits away from the Braun until you build a team that can do it. So why not make them the tag champs? Why not put them out at the front? And it lends itself to seeing them as champions with Seth. It's more gold for the vision. So, excuse me. So because of that, I don't understand. Where the fuck are the machine guns? We see the Street Profits every once in a while. They were there. But again, like, it's nothing. Montez Ford needs to be a singles wrestler. Let Dawkins go. Let this go. Go do your thing. I would love to see Montez Ford get a singles run and become a workhorse intercontinental champion. That would be amazing. But we're still worried about him being with Dawkins, even though we're not literally showing any love to the tag team division as things currently stand right now. The only tag team that matters, as it seems, in WWE currently is the women's tag team champions, which is Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. And this has gotten over well. It's been a big deal. Tonight, they try to get Alexa to do the woo that Charlotte does. Kathy Kelly did it with her, which is fun. And I'm glad. And they're showing them on all three shows. They're showing up in NXT. They're showing up on SmackDown. They've showed up on Raw. And now this is given, we talked about Javon Evans just a second ago. Now they brought in Sol Ruca and Zarya. And they got some love tonight against Chelsea Green and Alba Fire. And so we've seen them now a couple times. They're getting a little bit of love. So it's good. Like I said, it's good. NXT is getting some love. They're dipping their toe in the water against some good people that can work, and they're having some fun, and they're getting some introductions. But that women's division for the tag team titles has worked. Not only just because it's gotten Charlotte back as a babyface and the tag team is over as a whole, but it's worked. They're making them feel important. They're taking them down to NXT. They're putting them on Raw. They're putting them on SmackDown. They're telling people, you want a shot at us? Earn it. Come get it. So you got to build yourself up. You got to have something happen here to make something happen for the opportunity to get the title match. So, I mean, they're the most relevant tag team right now is the Women's Tag Team Championship. And I'm not complaining that they're relevant or the most relevant, but I am going to nitpick and complain that you've pissed away both tag team title sets on one on each show. So does that mean we just need to get rid of both and do what we do with the women and just make one set where the team can bounce around from every show and make them relevant because it's important to everything in between? And then have matches with tag teams that they have to earn it, where they have long storylines with other tag teams for long-term storytelling. I just think that there's something to that. That having tag team titles on both shows only works if you make them both prominent. And they haven't done that. Not at all. And it's happened multiple times now. the women, speaking of women, the other thing that's been important here and been a long-term story has been Rhea, Io, and the Kabuki Warriors. As we saw 2 weeks ago, Rhea would get spit with the mist from Asuka and look like a Smurf when it's over. And then this week, we saw Io take it, and she got the mist and looked like a Smurf all the way in her mouth. It was on her teeth. It was wild. But they're telling the story of that there's history with Asuka and Kyrie and, the former Damage Control team and the former, friends in other places and that they're a family and all this stuff. But Rhea's trying to convince her that that's not how family's treated. Nikki Bella has been involved in this and been told that that's not, your business. Stay out of it. I really like what they're doing with Asuka. Kyrie, like, I don't know. Like, her playing scared to Asuka is fine, but the acting it out part after, certain things happen is kind of so to me. But I like the overall story. And I'm glad that they're trying something different. And I hope that there's a big payoff in this. I hope they don't just, squash this whole thing over some small match that doesn't have a payoff crescendo moment. I feel like this could be something fun. It's something different. It's something that they're trying. And it's a creative direction that doesn't involve the Women's World's Heavyweight Championship that has, been the carrot that's been dangled in front of Rhea and been a part of EO. And now you got Asuka and Kyrie working together, but it's clear that Asuka's running the show and telling her what to do, and that's part of it. And even though EO took a little bit of a beating, and so did Rhea, and they both got misted, Kyrie gives EO the picture in the back of the three of them together and says, it's okay, we could still be a family. And so it leaves that lingering thought, like, is EO going to turn on Rhea finally and just go, you know what? She's right. Like, all I've done is lose my title. All I've done is had to worry about you or saving you. So maybe I need to go with them. So, like I said, I like what they're doing. It seems to be, a long-term thing here. And now they're going to get a tag match where it will be Io and Rhea taking on the Kabuki Warriors. So maybe there's something that happens in that match. Maybe it's accidental. Maybe it's on purpose. We'll see. But I like that we have something that makes you go, it could be this, could be that. And there's options. There's definitely options. And again, we've talked about this 100 times at this point. Stories that don't involve the titles. How important are they? They're super important. How invested am I? This one, I'm pretty invested. We've talked that by and large, that if you break things down with WWE, you can see that there's some really good things happening. Like I said, the bronze earlier, this story right here, Stephanie Vauquer getting a world heavyweight championship run could potentially be something great. Now they're letting Cena play the hits. This story about Jay turning possibly. There's some elements here that are not complete and total misses. There's definitely not. But I will say that there hasn't been huge payoffs and moments that everybody hopes for on a week-to-week basis at this point. WWE has done a poor job by reprogramming people into waiting for moments, waiting for Roman to come back. So they all stand up, and instead of watching the finish of the match, they're all watching the aisleway, waiting to see who's coming down and hoping that it's Roman. When it was Solo, it was who's the new member of his bloodline, or MFTs. Who's his MFTs? So we're going to watch him and all these moments. Well, because of that, when you stop having those moments so often, people are going, hey, what the hell? This is boring. This isn't the same thing. It's just like, doing spots. If you jump off a ladder and do a 450 and a backflip every single night, now it's not special. Now it's not important. And that lends itself to the point I made earlier about Roman returning for the 44th fucking time. How many times are you going to have him return? Like, yeah, he gets a pop. That's great. But is he getting a pop because it's who he is and it doesn't matter? Or is he getting a pop because everybody was genuinely surprised? There's a difference. And I think that the more you do that, how many times has he honestly returned this year? Right? Like, seriously. After 41, he disappeared. Then he disappeared again. Like, he's been doing this. He's been doing this. And people still look at each other like, no, it's okay. Like, no, it's not. It's hurting things because now the returns aren't as special because he's always returning. Every time somebody goes to do a movie or it goes to the public and the press that somebody's doing something that's not WWE related, oh, well, I know why they got rode off TV. They'll be back. And they'll just wait for that moment when you go, that's where they should come in. It takes it away. It takes away the specialness of it, the uniqueness of it. So there's still definitely things that to be unhappy about. But as I said, if you want to break it down, there's a lot to be hopeful for. And as a wrestling fan, we're fickle. We're always hopeful. And we can always defend what we're watching if you're somebody who likes it or somebody who is doing it because it's what you should do. It's wrestling. You watch wrestling, whether it's WWE, AEW, New Japan, whether it's Stardom, whether it's TNA, whatever it is, you'll watch it if you're a wrestling fan for real because it's wrestling. And you know that if you're one of those like myself who has ridden it out through times that were in my childhood, pre-Attitude Era to Attitude Era itself, to the early 2000s when WCW was bought out and how rough that got for a while. And then you got to like the 2008 to 2010 era and you're like, fuck, 2002 to 2006 really wasn't that bad. And then you realize that, there's going to be ebbs and flows and that this business is very much cyclical. So hopefully, I said this last week, hopefully they would do it better this week. With what I've seen, there was definitely some better things. But I think the number one problem is just the fact that them managing the workload, so to speak. We're seeing them be more worried about ad fillers and sponsorships and ticket prices than we are seeing, hey, you know what? Like, let's find a sweet spot. Let's not give them the minimum and try to give them the minimum and give them a banger in every show. And let's not try to maximize the show and go buck wild with 10 matches. But how about find the sweet spot? I think that 5 matches on a PLE is too short. I think 4 matches for a 2-hour fucking show is too little. You can squeeze 5 to 6 in easily in a PLE. And on SmackDown, if you're doing good things with promos, cool. But if you need to cut back on promos and do a couple weeks here and there that's mostly in-ring action, do that and mix it up. There's too much formula. There's too much, we got to do it this way again and again and again and again and again. Keep people guessing. Keep people thinking, right? Like, we've talked about what people think about kayfabe. Like, kayfabe's not dead. It just comes in a different way now when you try to push it through social media or you try to put things out there and let people speculate and believe what they want to believe. So why can't you continue to be creative, as it's in the name, and find different ways to reinvent things that, were once old, now new again, and find ways to integrate those things into a way that's not so cut and paste or carbon copy. I feel like they can do better than that. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're upset and you want to find the negative, you can. And if you're looking for the positive, there's definitely still a lot of positives. But either way, we're 1 week away from Crown Jewel that will take place in Perth, Australia. It will be live at 5 a.m. out here on the West Coast, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. So it will be very early. I will be at work that day because it's on a Saturday, so I won't be able to watch it directly live. I'll probably have to listen to it and then rewatch it, unfortunately. But that being said, we have come to the end of this episode. We are here for another week, and we'll be back next week for predictions. So as I said at the top of the show, please make sure that you subscribe and that you like, so that way we can continue to grow this show. Whether it's just me or it's all 3 of us, I'll have our predictions next week. We'll be back hopefully at our normal time and be able to make this all happen. And of course, thank you for listening. If you're listening to us at work, hopefully your work day goes fast. If you're listening to us at home, I hope you're enjoying yourself and watching the show on YouTube. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Grab a Hold podcast.